Welcome to This Week in Habs Land. He is Jordan, I am Brian, and each week we are here to talk about anything and everything Montreal Canadiens. You can find us on the socials at HabslandPod. Now, we are going to be tackling a pretty crappy week for the Montreal Canadiens. At least that's what we would be saying until they woke up in the third period against the Islanders and just demolished them, scoring 4 goals in that period. The first line was sick. Fowler held his own, and here we are still in a playoff spot when it was looking a little bit daunting after the matchups with Atlantic rivals didn't go exactly as we wanted. You know, maybe we shouldn't be too hard on them because they still came out of them with a few points there and then got the 2 points against the Islanders pretty strongly, even chasing Sorokin from the net. So Jordan, we'll start with this. Just what did you think of the week? And then you could jump right into your headline because I think that's the topic of conversation in Habsland in general right about now.
Yeah. First of all, apologies everyone for the potato mic. I'm not home and I don't have my real mic with me, so you're gonna have to deal with it. And that's why Brian is doing our lovely hosting this week. Yeah, pretty relaxing week. I don't know about you, Brian, but I certainly was just, definitely not worried at any given point at all this week. It was, the Canadiens play a really calming brand of hockey that never requires you to be on the literal edge of your seat for at least 2/3 of the game. So no, it was pretty good. Blood pressure's doing great. Everyone's just hanging in, and we're all surviving. Look, I think I changed my headline for the week at least 5 times on Saturday night alone. Weird week, it's I told you this a few days ago. I didn't want to come in, and this was before Saturday night. I didn't want to come in with another doom and gloom game or another doom and gloom episode. Not that we've done that too much, but I feel like we've ticked a lot of the boxes recently about the penalty kill, which is still terrible, about the fact that the defensive system is struggling consistently, the bottom six, blah, blah, blah. We've done it all. And I was starting to be sometimes we can feel the discord going one way or another. And it's okay, you and I feel the need to almost balance it out. And I think we're going to try to do that for the most part in this episode. Now, again, what happened in the third period on Saturday night naturally will balance a lot of the discourse out. So yeah, just an odd week. So I'll go right into my headline, and that is, I think, what it is, what the main story should be right now. And it's leaning from Canadian rock band 3 Days Grace's famous 2006 song is The Animal I Have Become, and that is the first line. Who scored 8 of the team's 11 goals this week, and specifically in the Islanders game, was just, there was large chunks of the game, and I was watching it with my dad, where you'd see the Deneau line come out, and it's really, especially if they lose a face-off, and Deneau was not great in the face-off circle, at least through 2 periods. Those guys would just get hemmed in. The captain line was doing, I think Marty made it sound like in his postgame that they were doing a little bit better, but I think largely if those guys aren't coming off the rush, they're a little bit limited. The Evans line, I still like it. Now it's a slightly updated one without Doc. And then the first line comes out, and it's a different game, and it's sustained zone pressure, and they're winning the puck everywhere they go. They outshot the Islanders at 5-on-5 when they were on the ice 10-2, and hat trick for Cole Caufield, 2 goals, 3 assists for Slafkovsky. Nick Suzuki has 4 assists and is not even one of the 3 stars of the game. He gets kicked out for talking too loudly, which I thought was a very interesting thing. The very I couldn't tell if that's going to help or hurt Suzuki's Lady Being case. If the one misconduct he got was because he talked too loudly. So they have reached another level like they did last year. It's a bit too much. It's a bit of an over-reliance, certainly. But yeah, I'll let you jump in because there's so much to say about them. But they are playing unreal hockey at the best possible time.
I want to tackle what you just said, which is the over-reliance thing, and sometimes that's just purely out of necessity. Marty, earlier in the season, tried all sorts of different, actually not even all sorts of different ones, but just a few different options in the top 6 in terms of, let's bring Slafkovsky off of the top line and try and balance things out. And then it became very apparent that if the other three lines can just be at about 45% effective, the fact the top line will be at about 98% effective will make up for that, and it's fine. And that's exactly what we saw against the Islanders. Now, of course, it's not going to work every single night, because when that line is not otherworldly, which, like, for instance, against the Red Wings, there was only one goal scored by the Canadiens. Hey, who got the goal and who got the assist? Oh, it was Uri Slafkovsky scoring. It was Nick Suzuki with the assist and Cole Caufield with the other assist. So even in a game where they could not score, they got one in the second period, and it was those three guys, and nobody else could contribute. So obviously it's not going to work every single night. They'll still put up one or two on most, if not all, nights, but sometimes it's not enough. And obviously in Detroit, that last goal being the empty netter, there was not a single point until the third period of the Islanders game this entire week where the score difference was more than a goal either, which is kind of interesting, which I think shows at least, like, if we're trying to spin this positive, that the other three lines, albeit not great, did not get caved in, because there was never a point where the momentum, just completely got stripped away from the Canadiens and the opposition got on the attack forever because, I don't know, let's say the top line was out there for a while, needed a rest, the other three lines go out back to back, and then we just get caved in. That didn't happen. So we don't have to be necessarily fearful of that. And then we got good goaltending as well, which is another factor here. So yes, it's an absolute over-reliance on the top line, but when you have a now Rocket competitor, when you have a Selke candidate, and when you have a unicorn in the case of Uri Slafkovsky, who the confidence that he's playing with right now is Olympic level. The play, I forget when it was, I think it was in the second period, when he got the puck on kind of a pseudo rush and then held it forever and went around two defenders and the goaltender and then tried to put it in on Sorokin, came across and made a nice save. But that's the type of play that we see Slaf do when he's tasked with being the most important person on the ice for his team. And he's taken some of that from the Olympics with him to the Canadiens, and now he's trying to take over games, which is just phenomenal. So I don't think that you could ask for more from this top line. Now they just need a little bit of help elsewhere, but even when they don't get it, 4 out of a possible 6 points this week, not terrible.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, really the focus right now is how strongly they've been playing. And I was thinking early on Saturday night, like, should you move Slafkovsky back to the second line? And then the game happens, and it's like, well, no, because when that line is together, they might be the best line in the league. So it's, you're not getting the balance you want, that you would prefer, actually, by having two lines rolling. But if you have the best line in the entire NHL, then I think that's something you live with. And, like, I wanted to dive in a bit more on some of the individual plays on Saturday. So obviously, like, Caufield scores his now, I think this is a Habsland trademark of the puck-sized hole goal.
Yeah.
Where he does it again on Sorokin, short side. I think that was his first of the game. It was. You have Slafkovsky's bumper goal, which, again, this is just, I really like that power play sequence in the first period where they go backdoor to Demidov. They don't have it. They win the puck back right away. Caufield and Suzuki flip their positions, and it creates a different angle. And as they're creating a different angle, Slafkovsky adjusts his position at the bumper. And then what do you have? Slafkovsky is open for the one-timer. He scores. I think the whole sequence, and this is, like, amazing stuff for Cole Caufield here. Like, we haven't said it, 40 goals, and I don't think we can undersell how big 40 goals is in this franchise. And our entire part two is mostly celebrating that. So we're absolutely going to get into it. Caufield is the second Slafkovsky goal, which is the 4-3 goal, huge goal. The Canadiens are trying to clear their zone, and they bumble it a little bit. And Suzuki, I think, tries to clear it around the boards a bit clumsily, and Caufield just powers through to win the puck on the left side of the ice in the defensive zone, helps clear it, brings it up the ice. Suzuki goes in on the forecheck by himself. He doesn't try to stick handle his way in. He dumps it in. He goes after his own puck. In that moment, he sees that there's two players, including Matthew Barzal, who Suzuki clearly got under his skin on Saturday night. He gets Barzal, and I think it might have been Schaefer, to come over to him. No, he knows someone's open behind the net, right? That's that chemistry of playing together for so many years that he knows it's either Slav or Caulfield, but someone's going to be behind the net because they have also figured out I've taken two guys. It's Caulfield behind the net. So Caulfield goes from a great defensive play to knowing where the space is, right? Knowing where your elite player creates space for you. And then also knowing right away that Slafkovsky is doing his job. He's in front of the net. And boom, they go up 4-3. It's moments like that, right? Like we talked about Suzuki and Caufield being off the rush guys, and that's what we're talking about the second line right now. So there is hope for Kapanen and Demidov in the future that they'll be able to sustain offense a little bit better. But it's like a more well-rounded game that all those guys are playing. So it's amazing. I think like having these guys together again, 8 of the 11 goals this week, it's both a good and bad thing. It's a double-edged sword, but it is a necessity if you want to evolve to the next level. And the East is still a bloodbath, and every single team is winning. At least Boston won in regulation on Saturday night.
Yeah, thank goodness.
But
against the Red Wings too, that was huge.
Yeah, other than that, every single outcome on Saturday went against the Habs. I guess the Habs winning in regulation against the Islanders is a big deal as well, right? Like the regulation stuff is huge. Yeah, it's been an interesting week. Like, and that's why I think it's important. We want to make sure we're celebrating this first line because while I do think there are things defensively that are better, they did play better, I think, defensively this week than they did. So I know the California teams just put a voodoo on them over the past few weeks. But I think the first line elevating again at the same time of the year is the best thing you can absolutely hope for.
Yeah, it's huge, man. When you consider what would this team look like, where we would be in the standings, how many goals we will have produced if the top line was just an average top line. I'm not even saying an average line in the NHL, like an average top line, maybe the 13th best in the league. Would we be out of a playoff spot? I think it's pretty darn likely. How many times have these three guys put the team on their back together, meaning all three of them were the ones on the score sheet? It's a lot of their goals are like this. And it extends to the other young players too. I've got a stat that's kind of interesting here for you, Jordan. And you know what? I'll present it in terms of a quiz, and we could do this very quick. The top 7 scorers at the moment from the Montreal Canadiens are all 26 years old or younger. And the average age is under 23 years. And that's in part because Kapanen got a point to pass Matheson for 7th on the team. How many times do you think that's happened in the Habs history, that the top 7 scorers are 26-year-old or younger?
I don't know, maybe twice.
Maybe twice is a good guess. I was thinking twice, 3 times. It's never happened. It's never, ever happened. So this is new ground that the Montreal Canadiens are playing with. And I wasn't going to go in and manually check every other team. I did the Habs, but I'm not going to do everything else. The closest was in 57-58. 27-year-old Dickie Moore was the oldest of the top 6 scorers. And then it went to like a 30-year-old. So even then, I didn't even account for the 7th. So kind of incredible that it's really the youth of this team that is carrying everything. And the leaders of that are obviously the top line. And then I want to bring our attention to one other guy, because I don't think we're going to get another opportunity to talk about him really. But another important piece of this win was Kaiden Guhle, who got 15 minutes of even strength ice time, about a minute shorthanded, no power play time, obviously, and still ended up with a goal and 2 assists. His like stat line, if you look at the box score, is the most interesting one, and that matches the eye test perfectly. Because he was a +3, he had 3 shots on net, 4 blocked shots, he had 14 penalty minutes, 2 hits. He was all over the place in less time than every other defender other than Jaden Struble, basically. So Kaiden Guhle seems to be back. He was physical, he was mean. There was one play where he pulled a classic Kaiden and turned his back at the last second, and I was like, uh-oh, problem there. But beyond that one little play, I thought that he had an excellent game. So yet another part of this core that just looks fantastic. So I just wanted to throw him in as well, because I don't think we're going to get another opportunity to talk about Kaiden Guhle. But what did you think of his game on Saturday night and then for the rest of the week?
It was his best week of the season by a mile. And I think he has that really early opening hit. I forget on who, either the first or second shift of the game, and I kind of set the tone for the Canadiens physically. Like, this is something the Canadiens, I think, clearly have heard over the past couple of weeks, that they're not tough enough. Yep. And I think you saw a lot with the 4th line, a lot of Bolduc and Texier, and even Jake Evans getting in there and finishing some checks. And I think they understand it too on the defensive end, that where that job needs to be done. And Kaiden Guhle was a big one. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't bring up the Barzal Suzuki incident.
Yes.
And that
Yes.
Suzuki, for one reason or another, and I haven't seen like a super clip of like 5 times during the game where Suzuki pestered Barzal. Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't happen, maybe Barzal was still annoyed about the 4-3 goal. But there's a moment there with 5-6 minutes left, everyone knows what I'm talking about, where Barzal drops the gloves with Suzuki because they're in there. Suzuki's laughing him off a bit, and he's kind of like, look at the scoreboard, this is not worth it. You have a game tomorrow against Columbus. And Barzal drops the gloves trying to initiate Suzuki. Suzuki never drops his gloves nor his stick smartly enough. And who jumps in there like an animal released out of a cage is Kaiden Guhle, saying, "No, not my captain. Get out of here." And the whole team jumps in and like, look, they're never going to be the biggest team the way they're currently constructed, but Alex Newhook was jumping in there, Mike Matheson was jumping in there. Everyone was getting in on it. There's definitely a post Matthews Gudis thing going on in the NHL right now where everyone's hypersensitive to all of this.
Yeah.
But I also didn't think it was forced by Kaiden Guhle. He wasn't like, oh, that's right, I'm supposed to do this now. It was more, what is that guy doing to my captain? It's my job to go get him. It felt, you know what I mean? Like it felt very
100%.
like authentic and genuine. And I think that was part of his like really, really good week, was sticking up for his teammates. And like his ice time was a bit lower. He didn't play the last 5.5 minutes of the game, nor did Suzuki because he got kicked out for talking.
Yeah.
And then also, interestingly enough, Slafkovsky and Caufield didn't see the ice the last 5 minutes because I think Marty's like, I'm not risking anything. Those guys aren't jumping on the ice in any capacity. They didn't play at all the final 5 minutes. They didn't have a center, but I don't think it mattered. But yes, Kaiden Guhle, I think his best week of the season. He stepped up in a moment where he needed to step up because he heard some of the footsteps behind him, be it David Reinbacher, be it Adam Engstrom, but also just like he is an important piece of this team. If you have 3 super offensive defensemen, and Dobson, Matheson, Hudson, which we need a nickname for. Can we call them the 3 Sons? There's something in there. Then Kaiden Guhle understands it as number 4, what his job needs to be to almost balance it out and not overdo it, but balance it out. And I thought he was tremendous on Saturday, but also on Tuesday and Thursday as well.
Yep. He was really solid all week. On that play with Barzal, you're absolutely right. It was, he turned his head, he saw what was going on, and not a split second even went by, and he was on his horse and gunning it towards there to rip him off of Suzuki. So I thought that was fantastic. In general, I've got it, actually. This just occurred to me. Guhle and Sons is the top 4, like Mumford and Sons or Stanford and Sons or one of those. Okay. Guhle and Sons. It's not perfect. We can workshop it. Who cares? We also need still a nickname for the top line because they're definitely staying together now. Is it the best line? Can we just call it that? Can we just call it the best line in the NHL? Is that good?
There was a running joke at one point by an NBA reporter who he would call it was almost ironic, but there's a player called DeLon Wright, and he called him the best player in the world, and he would use that acronym of TBITWP or whatever. And that was just a thing, and he would just refer to him as that. Maybe we just call it the best line in the world.
The best line in the world. Yeah.
And we can, and that's who they are, and we're kind of set. You're right. That sounds like an off-season project for you and I, Brian. That we need to put a top five nickname options together for these guys, because you're right. They need a second line center still, but I don't see any reason for these guys to be broken up. Like if they were like 20% less effective, sure, and they were like a very good first line, then I can see you wanting to split up the duties. But when they're scoring 2-3 goals a game,
yeah,
you can't do that.
No.
They have to stay together, and Marty gets it. And I don't think he's gonna break them up the rest of the season. I don't think anyone believes that.
No, if the top 6 with them broken up in a more balanced state was more effective as a whole, then you'd have the argument. But it's clearly not. It's clearly, when this top line is together, they're otherworldly, and the second line is not ideal, but even that is a better combination than a balanced top 6 where neither one is really overpowering. You know, none of them are going to take over a game unless those 3 guys are together. So I think that's spot on. Maybe we'll put out a few episodes in the off season where all we do is discuss nicknames for these guys. I thought remember, I think last year, 2 years ago, we talked about staircase, because when they're standing next to each other, that's how big the height difference is. But that kind of sucks. So I think the best line in the world. I think that's what it is.
Works for me.
Yeah. So anyway, great headline, Jordan. Animal I Have Become. Who knew that it actually also extended to Kaiden Guhle? Where's the line? Hang on, I'm looking at the lyrics of the song that you mentioned now. Someone get me through this nightmare. I can't control myself. That looked a lot like Kaiden Guhle when he was skating to go rip Barzal off Suzuki. So I think that's perfect. So on that note, I think that's about it. Like, we're going to continue to talk about how good that line is in the second half, but I want to jump to my headline very quickly. I'm very excited about the second half, so I'm going to keep this short, but my headline is Idiot Sandwich, and a kind of pseudonym might be Compliment Sandwich, because as you know, Jordan and I for years have been lamenting about how the second periods are where the team goes to die, it seems. It's where the team falls asleep often, and this Islanders game could not be more emblematic of that, at least until the final couple minutes of the second period when we managed to score a couple goals, and then Schaefer got a power play goal, so it went a little back and forth. But for the most part, that second period was brutal. We had 17 or 18 shots in the first. I don't remember exactly how many because they keep changing it, but a lot of shots in the first period, and the opposition had 7. So 10 more shots. And then they caught almost the entire way back in the first 15 minutes of the second period. So I have some stats here to kind of make it so that it's not just recency bias. You know, it's not just the Islanders game here. In terms of how many goals the Canadiens score and their opponents score by period, in the first period, it's 69-59. So the Habs have way more goals in the first than the opposition does, and that's actually way less overall than I thought. I thought there were more goals in the first period than this, but that by far is the lowest amount of goals of any of the 3 periods for both our team and the opposition. In the second period, so we're plus 10 there in the first. In the second, we're minus 6, 78-84, and then in the third, 85-75. So again, plus 10. So plus 10 in the first period, minus 6 in the second period, plus 10 again in the third period, and then 10-5 in OT, which is kind of crazy that many goals are going in overtime. But it paints a pretty clear picture here that the Montreal Canadiens, for whatever reason, and I think part of my headline is trying to ascertain what that reason might be or what the multiple reasons could be. But it's very clear that in the second period, at least in terms of goals, we get a little bit caved in. If you look at the shots, it's actually very different. Shots by period in the first, we're up by maybe 20. In the second, we're down by maybe 14. But then in the third period, we're down by about 80 shots. And my memory tells me we have not protected enough leads to account for 80 shots of a difference, which is kind of interesting. But anyway, let's get back to the scoring. And this is independent, regardless of if we're home, if we're away. When we're at home, we're plus 6 in the first, plus 4 in the third, and minus 4 in the second. It's the same for away. We're up in the first, up in the third, and down in the second. So like if you're saying, well, it's probably when they're away because of the long change, it's at home too. So even when the team has the ability to, okay, those are the 3 players, those are the 5 players the opposition's putting out, we're going to cater this line to them. Even when we're able to do that and match up properly, it's not working. So I'll throw it to you first. Do you think that there's a particular reason for this? Do you think that there might be more than one?
The goal differential breakdown is actually really interesting, right? So it's plus 10, minus 6, and then if we include third period and overtime, it's plus 15.
Yeah.
So at a glance, what that tells me is that the Canadiens are a team with a good amount of talent and a good hockey club, so that when things come out of the gate, they usually outscore their opponent. And then the second periods, that tells me that either A, there's a lack of consistency in the team being, I mean, we know this, of being able to put together a consistent 60-minute effort. And it usually appears to happen in the second period, which is the most likely time that there are adjustments in the game from the opposition. You have the first intermission to think it over, and then you have the second period. And whether it's the Canadiens being able to be consistent enough to bring the effort and / or your opponent making some adjustments, the Canadiens begin to suffer. And then we get to the third period in overtime, and that's their best combination at plus 15. That shows me that there's a bit of a clutch gene in this team, and that there are gamers on this team. So that we'll leave the third period to the side because we were talking more about the second. But I think that's kind of the first thing that it shows me. And the shots thing is also a bit interesting as well. I do think they have an issue guarding a lead, but whatever. The second period stuff, it's the consistency of a young team. they're just incapable of putting together 60-minute efforts. And I do think some people maybe misconstrue what a 60-minute effort really is. It doesn't mean you outplay your opponent for 60 minutes. Believe it or not, there's guys on the other side of the ice that are getting paid just as much money as you and have the exact same goal as you. They're also
Right.
incredibly talented. So
Yes,
like
they want it just as much.
it makes sense that that the Detroit Red Wings eventually take over a game at home, or in the third period in that example, or that the New York Islanders in the second period against the Canadiens, like you're bringing up, they handled us. I think part of it too is, and this is not necessarily temporally based, speaking of second period versus first period, the penalty kill, man. We saw really on Saturday night how much special teams affects the flow of the game. The Canadiens are doing great, and then there's a penalty, and the Habs take a penalty, they give up a power play goal, and they're deflated. And that runs them deflated for the rest of the first period. And then the second period, they're floating without a life raft until they get a power play towards the end of the period. And that gives them more life. Gallagher then takes another dumb penalty. Third period starts, and it's back to even square, more or less, for the start of the third period.
Let me jump in on the Gallagher thing. He did the exact same thing that was done to him 20 seconds earlier, and he got called, but you still don't do it because now the ref's looking for it.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's the signs of an inconsistent young team. And I just, without diving back into stuff we've gone over in the past few weeks about the bottom six, about the defensive structure, you're hoping that these are learning lessons and that they're able to withstand some of this. And I do think if they had stronger special teams, specifically on the penalty kill, they might be able to supercharge their way out. Like, don't forget, momentum doesn't only change with power play goals, it also changes with penalty kills, right? If they're able to successfully kill off a 2-minute penalty halfway through a period, that does, we don't feel it anymore, because I think I saw the stat on TVA Sport on Saturday. There's something like below 70% penalty kill in the last 25 or 30 games. Like, it's a drastic issue.
Oof.
And that bleeds into 5-on-5. So I don't know. What are you seeing that is the cause for, and I think maybe if you'll allow me, it's not necessarily just a second period malaise. That tends to be where we see it the most often now that we've gotten rid of the Monty first shot goes in issue.
Yes.
But there is a, whether it's 12 minutes in or 22 minutes in, there is going to be a stretch where the Canadians almost shut off, and there's a 9-minute stretch or a 12-minute. Like it was basically a full period's worth of hockey against the Islanders, where the Islanders thoroughly outplayed the Canadians. The Canadians beat them for the other 40 minutes easily, but maybe from like the 8-minute mark of the first period to about the 12 or 13-minute mark of the second, it was all Islanders. So what do you see is happening there?
So I'm really glad that you brought up the power play penalty kill momentum stuff, because I think that's a big part of it. Part of the reason that the Canadians tend to take a lot of penalties in the second is they get hemmed in their zone. They don't necessarily get an opportune time to change, because most NHL teams, we're not used to seeing this because the Habs don't have it, but most NHL teams have at least two lines that are capable of holding the puck in your zone for an extended period of time, even if that's their only job. Like a third and fourth line where their job literally is get pucks deep, hit the crap out of the defenseman to get possession back, put it back to the point, and just cycle. Waste 40 seconds, get the opposition tired, and then start changing one by one, and then get the top line out there to take advantage of these slow players. And then what do the slow players do? They either let in a goal or they take a penalty. Those are usually the two, or they ice the puck, and then the cycle restarts. So I think it's a lot having to do with the long change, the youth and inexperience of this team, of like timing of when to change. And I think they also tend to have a good deal of overconfidence when they're young hockey players, in terms of like, no, I can make it back and then go back down the ice one more time. I have the endurance to do that, but you're not necessarily accounting for the fact that you're going to have to battle for pucks, which expends energy. And then it's just too much to account for. So I think earlier changes would help a lot in the second period when possible. But I think that they're also trying to take advantage of the opposition who are older and try and hem them in their zone. So it's a lot of risk taking and risk aversion that might be the sticking point here, for lack of a better term, in terms of like what they can focus on. I want to jump to another stat that I have here that I think is really interesting. When after two periods, so when the team is leading after two periods, just to show how dominant they are in the third, and how like they're not that great at protecting leads. We thought, based on these stats, they really are. 21-4-2 when after two periods the Canadians are leading. So that's, I didn't do the math, 27, that's 54, 42, 43, 44 out of a possible 54 points accumulated when leading after the second period. So that's actually excellent. And as we know, the Canadiens don't really win games by several points unless they're playing the Islanders at home. But so a lot of those are like 1-goal games. So that's pretty impressive. When they're trailing, they're pretty bad. 5-14 and 5. So coming back in those games, what we thought they were great at, the stats tell a different story. And here's the really crazy one. When tied, so both teams should have the same odds when tied, right, Jordan? 12-3 and 3, including 7-1 and 1 at home. So the Canadiens, out of a possible, 36 points, are getting 25 points out of a possible 36 when tied, when the odds are even. And a lot of that is just holding on to the tie to get to overtime and then letting the kids do their magic. But some of that is winning it in the third period as well. So just a few more stats to look at in terms of how dominant the Canadiens are in the third period. So yes, I called this idiot sandwich because I just think that's a hilarious headline. Once I thought of it, I was not changing it. But maybe the most interesting part is the bread, is the fact that, especially the bottom piece, the third period piece of bread, how good they are in third periods, and then overtime, maybe that's an olive or a garnish sticking out of the top of your sandwich, and that's how good they are at the end of games. So is that an endurance thing because they're all kids? Is that the momentum swings them? Is that it's hard to say why they're so good in third periods, but the clutch factor is almost criminal. It's almost unfair. How many game go ahead goals, which that should be Cole's nickname. Forget Cole Caufield. It's go ahead Cole Caufield. How many go ahead goals does Cole Caufield have on the season now? It's like 25 or more, something like that.
I think I've seen
no one's even close.
I think I've seen something along the lines of like he has like 14 or 15 goals when the game is tied this season. If
it's more than that, because go ahead and winning goals. Or are they is that why? Are they counting if he scores the 3-1 goal and then the opposition scores the 3-2 goal?
Maybe, yeah, but it is an absurd amount of his goals are in the moment. I do want to pause for a second, Brian, and say that it's truly a pleasure watching you figure out your metaphors on the fly and then trying to
backfill them.
Yeah, trying to keep them going.
No matter how absurd and terrible they are.
Yeah, so I will say you're getting better and better at it, or maybe at least I'm enjoying it more and more. So I guess that means they're getting better. Yeah, I mean, look, this is a team. The one thing I thought that is kind of interesting, and we need to look at this in more depth, is like the splits, the home away splits for a lot of these teams is really interesting. But when we get to the playoffs, we don't think of home ice advantage as that much of a big deal anymore. But absolutely during the regular season it is. You see how much better these teams play, especially young teams play at home compared to on the road. Yeah, just kind of something to keep in mind. And how should the Canadiens make the playoffs this year? Let's just keep an eye and keep tracking that and see how differently they play. But
if I have an interesting comparable here, because a team that keeps getting compared to the Canadiens for better or for worse is the Anaheim Ducks, first in the Pacific right now, and a young team with tons of skill, lots of scoring. At home, 22-10-2, very good. Away, 16-17-2.
There you go.
Whereas the Canadiens away, it just shows so much more maturity that the Canadiens are 18-8-8 win away and 20-13-2. So they can win on the road and at home. So I'm glad you're bringing that up too, because the lack of maturity thing does not apply to playing on the road. They're just as good at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I think it's weird to say this, but I thought defensively they did have a better week. And I think something's been happening in the past 2 weeks where the hockey is it's morphing, as it always does at this time of year. But I think maybe I'm a bit more attuned to it this year. But the how tight the games are, and I don't mean score-wise only, I just also mean the way they're being played. Yeah. It's changing, and it's interesting to see this team adapt to it, where last year it was very much like seat of their pants, doing whatever they can, relying, I think, more consistently on veteran performance, whereas this year it's a bit more like those guys aren't going to be saving you. I know we were not the biggest Christian Dvorak fans, but he was one of their 6 or 7 best players down the stretch last year. That's not happening. There's no Phil Deneau. There's no Brendan Gallagher, similar type performance happening this year. It's going to have to happen from the big guys and the kids and those performances. And that also means as a team, right? It doesn't always just need to be individual performances, right? As a team, they need to perform better. And I think moments like Guhle stepping up and more consistent play out of Bolduc and Texier as wingers in the bottom six, like are part of the puzzle. And that's, again, who knows? Like, truthfully, they probably should have beaten Detroit, and maybe that's a 6 point week, and we think about it a little bit differently. But sometimes John Gibson is really good, and they get a little bit lucky, and that there's a weird bounce on a Mike Matheson stick, and the game ends in regulation. Sometimes that just happens. That's hockey. But I think, again, generally, I thought they played very well this week.
I agree with you. You asked the question like maybe you're just looking for that, and is it bias? I don't think it is. I think they really tightened up, and I think that the teams that they were playing chose to tighten up, knowing that if we open this game, the Habs are scoring 6 goals on us. So especially against the Detroit Red Wings, who didn't have Dylan Larkin, like Lucas Raymond can't do it alone. In terms of like the skill that they have, and Patrick Kane, but he's old. Like they don't have the talent when Larkin's out of the lineup that the Canadiens do. So they chose to close the game. The Canadiens agreed, and they lost. And then when you look at the 2 goals that went in against Boston, the first one was the Carrier high stick, which was a 4-minuter. So what are you going to do there? That's penalty kill, got caved in. And then the next one was Kapanen and Hudson run into each other, fall to the ice, and then that opens up a lane for the Bruins to come in and score a goal. So like even in games, one of them where they lost, the other one that was really close, overtime win, like too close for comfort against a rival who's on your tail. Both of those games, the goals against were because of blunders and mistakes, which shows you that the tightness defensively of this team is improving, and that maybe these are not the 3 best tests. Boston, Detroit, and the Islanders are not the 3 best offensive teams that you could think of in this league, but they are 3 teams who might be a matchup in the playoffs, and so you have to get accustomed to playing their style as well, because if they're dictating the style and you can't beat them in a closed game, good luck to you. So I think, why don't we jump into part 2? This is an idea that Jordan had the other day, and I love it. I'm going to let you tell the people what it is.
I'll do my best here. It might be a bit complicating. We're going to do it again, something a little bit more fun, and I think in honor specifically of Cole Caufield becoming the first half to score 40 goals since Stolfus in 1994. And by the way, it's 41, it's 42, it's 43. We're going to complete what I'm calling the next draft. So it's going to be a 5-round draft. We're each going to have 5 picks, where Brian and I are going to draft the most likely upcoming milestones and or achievements for the franchise. So what does this look like? This could look like theoretically Nick Suzuki becoming the first player to get 100 points in 30 plus years. This could be Blaine Hudson winning the Norris Trophy for the first time. I guess that would be since 2013 in Subban. That's what we're kind of looking for. The next big things to happen: a 50-goal season, a rookie, another Vezina Trophy season, all that type of stuff. And the parameters around it, we're gonna open them up and make it a bit force Brian and I to split it up here. So we have a couple rules. So each draftee must make a pick in one of the following 5 categories. Now the order in which we pick the categories is up to Brian and I. So the first category is first, i.e., so-and-so is the first Montreal Canadien to do X. Or alternatively, so-and-so is the first Montreal Canadien to do X since Y. So for instance, Cole Caufield is the first Montreal Canadien to score 40 goals since Vincent Delfosse in 1994. Or alternatively, you can say Cole Caufield will be the first Montreal Canadien to win the Rocket Richard, period, right? It can be either or. We let it open it up. The second category is your awards. So who's the next Montreal Canadien to win an award? Third one is the goalie category. So this just has to be some type of milestone or achievement by a Montreal Canadiens goalie. The fourth is a team milestone. So a very, very wide swath here you can pick from. And 5 is wild card. It can be literally anything else you want to throw in here. So I will say, like, these don't need to be record breakers. If we bring up a point total, it doesn't need to break Guy Lafleur's, I think, 131 points. It doesn't need to be that. It can be, ideally, it's not like 85 points or 95 points or, 45 points by a rookie. I guess rookie defenseman wouldn't make sense because Caufield broke a bunch of that. But let's try to go with like 50 points or 40 goals or 100 points, stuff like that. A bit more round, right?
Nice numbers.
Another thing is you are allowed to pick something that may still happen this season. However, I will hold you personally accountable if it doesn't happen. So tread carefully.
Because that's a jinx?
That's a jinx. And then the last one.
Okay, so I definitely should not have prepared for almost entirely this season stuff then. Oops.
It's at your own peril. That's all I'll say. And I will say I did write one down this season. And the last one is just to spread the ball around a little bit. Once one player is taken, they cannot be taken again, with the exception of the goalies, because we recognize you can only pick like 2 goalies.
Yeah. Only 2 goalies, and there's only one realistic.
Is there?
Look, Dobesh was great this week.
I have a Dobesh one.
Stylistically, I did. Okay, you know what? Then that's amazing. So then why'd we put this stipulation?
Because I was nice to you and you were asking a lot of questions, and I said, sure, why not? That's okay.
Okay. That's
so hopefully, again, the 5 categories, a first one, right? So breaking through a barrier, very much like Caufield did, first 40 goal scorer in 30-something years, an award category, a goalie category, team-oriented, and then a wild card to go crazy. All right. Let's jump into it. Brian, I will give you the first pick. How we'll do this is I'll give you 1, I'll take 2 and 3, and from that point on, we'll rotate back and forth until we get down to the 10th pick, if that is all right with you.
That sounds great. I'm going to start with the first, and I'm going to go with a first that is not a first since anything. It's an actual first, and this is Lane Hutson becomes the first 70-assist D-man in Montreal Canadiens history. So the leader right now, as you probably already know, those of you listening, Larry Robinson had 66 assists.
Wow. Okay.
And Lane Hutson currently is at 58 assists in 69 games. So that means he's got 13 games left to do 12 assists. So this is one where I don't really think it's going to happen this season. Likely it won't, but there is potential for it. If he has a couple 2 and 3 assist games, then suddenly he's on pace again. And I want to get him out of the way because Lane Hutson is a candidate for all of it. Like when you go as just put this little, I guess, suffix there, as a defenseman, he could be in any one of these except the goalie. So I wanted to take him off the board.
Okay.
Early.
So you have Hutson, first Habs defenseman to score 70, get 70 assists in a season. Listen, 60 last year, 58 this year. When I was trying to come up with ones for Demidov, for like best age 20 Canadian to do this,
right.
age 21 Canadian to Hudson's just done all of it. I was trying to figure out like what is the record for most assists by an age 20 Montreal Canadiens player, and it's Lane Hutson last year. And I'm like, okay, what about this year? I'm like, oh, it's going to be Lane Hutson this year. So I was really trying to squeeze in Demidov somewhere, but I realized the most likely one is assist based early on in his career, and Hutson just has him blocked. So I think that's great. I'm very happy you took Lane Hutson because I thought the 2 guys I wanted to get off the board were Suzuki and Caufield, and it was just a choice of what category. So Suzuki, I'll take a Suzuki one. I'll take with my first pick, and there's so many different places we can go with Nick. But I think the one that makes the most sense is, and I guess I can phrase this as a first, but I'll use this as a wild card just because I don't want to like make it sound weird. Nick Suzuki will break the record for longest serving captain in Montreal Canadiens history when he does it in his 11th season. So he's in year 4 right now. The record is tied between Jean Beliveau and Saku Koivu. I thought there's not many 2000s guys we're going to bring up here. There's going to be a lot of since 1980, since 1970 here. I wanted to get Saku in here in some capacity. Nick's at 4 right now. There's no universe where he doesn't make it at least to 7. And then I would be floored if this is not 13, 14 seasons of Nick Suzuki as captain of the Canadiens. So that's what I'll go with my wildcard pick. In terms of milestone, so I guess this would be all the way out in the 2033 season would be his 11th year as captain. I don't see a reason why this wouldn't happen. So Suzuki breaking the record for longest tenured captain of the most historic franchise in the NHL,
and one that includes some of the best leaders, forget hockey, of sports in general. Jean Beliveau, in terms of a class act who's a leader and a meaningful presence to an organization, I can't think of somebody more important. So obviously back in the day, one incredible captain would hand the torch to another incredible captain, and therefore 11 years, that was surprising to me. I was like, well, Beliveau must have had but he took the torch from somebody else who was incredible, who had it for probably 8-10 years, something like that. So wow, that's really cool, and I'm glad you're bringing up Saku. We both love Saku Koivu so much.
It also shows that between Koivu and Suzuki, who are going to end up being some of the longest tenured captains. There wasn't an abyss, but you had three captains in Gionta, Pacioretty, and Weber, and I think Ali. I think in all three instances you had a gap here in between. There was no captain in 11. I don't believe there was a captain in 16 or in 15, I should say. And then I think also in 22 there was no captain. Just kind of, I mean, Shea Weber was a great captain. I think of the three, he was by far the best. But it's just like we had for a while there, an era there, short stints as captain, 3 and 4 seasons as captain, which I think is kind of more
Right.
typical. And then we kind of buck the trend finally and have the youngest captain in Habs history already. And now I think will be the longest tenured. Okay, so the next one I'm going to take a Cole Caufield one, and I'm happy because then I get to make sure you're not able to jinx Caufield's pursuit for 50. So what I'm going to go with is Cole Caufield will become the first. So I'll use this in my first category. First Montreal Canadian to reach 300 career goals since Steve Shutt in 1981. He
Very
is right behind Captain Nick right now. I think he's either 1 or 2 goals behind Nick who's tied for 35th right now. To make it all the way up to Steve Shutt, who is 8th, Cole needs about another 130 or 140 goals. So we're talking about 3 seasons from now. As long as Cole stays healthy, I don't see this particularly being a tough thing. Him too, I don't see Caufield going anywhere in the next 3 to 4 seasons. So I think that's pretty safe as long as he's healthy. There's 250, 300 games worth of hockey. He keeps it up with this pace and this line, he'll get it. In that top zone, you had Jacques Lemaire and Guy Lafleur, who both did it in the 70s. They crossed over 300, and everyone else is way before that when you go to Rocket and Lafleur and Pocket Rocket as well. Like all those guys in and around the 250, 270, 300 zone. It's just Lafleur and Lemaire in the 70s, and then Steve Shutt eclipses that in 1981. And that's the last time we've seen it. I mean, Galley has been banging on the door of 250. He still needs 4 more to get to eclipse 250, but he would also be the first in a long time just to get that high. I think we can shoot a little bit higher for Caufield. And so in my first category, I'll take Caufield hitting 300 goals first since 1981.
I think that's excellent, Jordan. What a pick. One thing that kind of is I don't know, we bring it up all the time, but I'm going to bring it up again. It's just the different ways in which Cole scores. And I think that when you look at the goal scorers of the past for the Montreal Canadiens and how they would score goals, Pacioretty always comes to mind in that he had the shot and that he wouldn't crash the net. He wouldn't go to the goal line to really fight for pucks. And Cole is doing all that. And that's the reason he got to 40 and that Pacioretty didn't. And then the other thing that, or I'll put it this way, yes, Cole scores in many different ways, but like Maurice Richard, he does not need empty netters. So every single one of Cole Caufield's goals in his career so far has been on a goalie. And Maurice Richard scored all 544 of his goals with the Montreal Canadiens on a goalie. Obviously, back then, goalies were not pulled as readily as today. It just wasn't a thing. Now, everybody does it. So it's that much more incredible that Cole Caufield has scored every one of his goals on a goalie. Although some of them, it doesn't matter if a goalie is there or not. He's going to find the puck-sized hole. I think I am going to go to the team one next, just because I think it's a pretty cool one. And this one is a this season one, based on how well the power play has been doing lately. It's just shy of 25%. So this season, the Montreal Canadiens will have a power play percentage of 25% or better for the first time since 85-86. So 40 years. In 85-86, they had 25.36% power play. And the best they ever had, because you know me, I had to go back and check for the best one, ever 31.88% in 77-78. Holy crow, that is just ridiculous. And obviously I'm picking this one because it's topical. The power play has come alive. It's full of unbelievable talent and crazy dekes to open space to get the puck through a seam and then to another seam, and then one of Slafkovsky or Caufield or Suzuki or Hudson or Demidov, someone's putting the puck in the net. Often it's Slaf. Very often it's Slafkovsky. So I think that's pretty cool. The next one I want to go to, this is tough. This gets tough after Suzuki, Caufield, and Hudson are off the board, I think. I might do my goalie one and ponder the others a little bit more. I have a question. If I do one that takes care of two categories, do I then get two wild cards?
No, you have to pick it for one or the other.
That's cheating. Okay. So, because I wanted to give Fowler the Vezina, but I don't know which to do that for. But I guess I have to kind of do it for the award. So I'm not going to do that. I think I'm going to do Fowler first to 40 wins since Price.
Okay.
And that's a tough one. I did this one especially because I don't actually think it's as likely. Just because of the way that teams operate now, nobody's playing 60-plus games like Price did in his prime. And his 44 wins, I believe, that's the most in Canadiens history in one season, came in that unbelievable 2014-2015 season where he just won all the awards. So for Fowler, even to get to 40, I think is a very tall order. But I was talking before about how, like, I asked you if we could both pick Fowler because I really didn't think Dobesh would be in the running for any of this. And I'm glad that you might bring him up because I'm very curious. But I do think it's a one-horse race in terms of the future of this team, just in terms of the style that Fowler plays. The poise that he displays while in the net is unlike anything I've seen since the guy I just spoke about. And Dobesh stylistically is very different than that. He's more aggressive, he's more risk-taking, whereas Fowler doesn't need to take any risks because his positioning is basically close to perfect. And so that's why I think that when you look at the Vezina, one of two goalies get them. It's a Jonathan Quick who is all over the place, or like a Dominic Hasek is another great example, all over the place, diving, making crazy, ridiculous saves. Or it's the guy who never moves out of his position because his positioning is perfect and he doesn't have to move, and he basically just does what he does very calmly and consistently and ends up with a save percentage 20 points above everybody else.
Yeah. I mean, someone had to take Jacob Fowler. He is still eligible for me to take, but so to be clear, you are taking him as awards, a goalie.
I'll take him as the goalie one. Yeah, I'll do the goalie.
I mean, I think there are some options with Dobesh specifically. I think you know what? Like, going through some of this, I realize how much focus there's been on 40 goals and how we haven't talked about a lot of other like cool milestones that haven't been hit. Oliver Kapanen scored 20 goals 3 weeks ago. He's the first rookie forward to do that in 20 years since Chris Higgins. You're going to have Ivan Demidov score likely 60 points as a rookie. Again, I think we have to go all the way back probably to, in terms of forwards, to Michael Ryder was the last one that did that, maybe in 2004. So,
okay,
not that I'm taking any of these, but I just thought, you know, there's been a lot of cool stuff that's been happening this year. On Dobesh, what is interesting is, look, the rookie wins record for the Habs is stupid because it's Ken Dryden with 39, because that man was an absolute psychopath.
Yes.
Let me say this, though. Yes. Carey Price had 24 wins as a rookie. Patrick Roy had 23 wins as a rookie. Jakob Dobesh, as it stands, has 22 wins as a rookie. So
wow,
there's an opportunity there. Let me just look at so you've taken goalie. So I need to undercut you at least with awards then. And I'll say Kent Hughes in 2 seasons will win for the first time. But this is a first, but I'm going to use it as an award. A GM of the year. Montreal Canadiens GM has never won this. Award's only been around, I think, for about 15 to 20 years. It's a post-2006 lockout thing for sure. So I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with it. Let me try to remember when I think it's all going to happen. 27-28 season? Let's go with that. And
when he lands the ridiculous free agent that gets the team to the President's Trophy.
I think that's the year that the Habs fully arrive in the contender zone. And there needs to be moves to do that. And I do wonder, it might not have to be a like, holy smokes, he's gotten the biggest fish that's ever been around. But I wonder if part of it's going to be like, but he's been doing this for 5 or 6 years. And it's a bit of like an accumulation award of like, we saw what you did at the 22 draft. We saw the bold choice you made with David Reinbacher and then still scooping Fowler. We saw what you did with the Noah Dobson trade. We saw what you did with sneaking Demidov in and also getting Michael Hage. And, you know, step by step. But then he makes one, like a bigger scale thing, maybe in the 27-28 season, which might not be the biggest trade of all time. It might not even be as the Jim Nill won it again last year, I think primarily for the Mikko Rantanen trade. Maybe it's not even Rantanen level. Maybe it's a little bit below that. But I wonder if there'll be a kind of an accumulation factor of like, look what this guy has built over the last 7 years. He deserves it. So I'll take in awards, Kent Hughes, GM of the Year.
So, first of all, you suck. I really, for some dumb reason, didn't think that you'd go GM or that you'd think of it. I thought I was being clever. So, you did, in fact, pull the rug out from under me in a big way. I'm going to have to scramble now for the award. So that's fun. But yeah, that's dead on, man. That's dead on. If it's a cumulative thing, it won't take long because he's already been well above average, close to the top of all GMs in the league his entire time here. Every step of this rebuild, he's done as close to perfect as you possibly can, knowing that when you draft, it's magic beans. When you make trade, you're dealing with magic beans and you don't know how a player is going to react in a new system. And so I think that that's definitely a great pick. The other option is Martin St. Louis as a coach, but I do really believe that one's going to take a long time. If he was not able to get it for the development of the young players, which you don't really get that award for that, it's going to take him a long time, I think, to get to a point where he can contend with the John Coopers of the world, the perennially winning coaches who really understand all the different systems and how to deploy their players and run the team effectively. And it's also going to take Marty having a team that's well balanced, which we do not have right now. So I might scramble a bit for the award. Did you just do two of them, or you still have one more?
One more on the Jack Adams thing. It is true how like that one of all the awards is the most that's like typecast. There's only like 3 different ways you can win it. You can bring a team from nothing into something. You can have like the first time a team has made the playoffs, and you can have holy smokes, this team had 120 points. He is fully out of the nothing into something zone. That card's been burnt. He finished 3rd in voting.
Yeah.
I think that's over. I think his next thing is the Canadiens, and it's a regular season award, which I find is weird for Coach of the Year, especially for GM of the Year, that it's a 1-year regular season award. But whatever. I feel like he has burned his eligibility in that first zone. Like this year, who's it going to go to? Is it going to go to Rick Bowness in Columbus since he's going to have coached half a season, but they're a team that's been on fire since he took them over. He probably wins it, even though he will have only coached 45, 50 games. But anyways, it's an interesting award. And St. Louis, one of the paths of St. Louis winning it's been used up because they're not they're not the like out of the blue up and comer anymore. And I think they're like step function progression this year from 91 points to like, let's say 98 or 102 is like just like not enough to like blow your socks off, but also like not small enough to where like next year if they go to 107, it's like just you're not making, and that's just how the award is voted. Super weird.
Yeah, which is crazy when you add the context that this is the youngest team in the league. True. So in a vacuum, not counting what they've done in the past few seasons as the youngest team, not counting that stuff, it really looks at, holy crow, you brought the youngest team in the league to an Atlantic Division spot when every team except for like 1 or 2 in the Atlantic are dogs and really in it. So that's really impressive, but wouldn't necessarily happen. All right, what's your next pick?
I'll hold the team one for a bit because I got a couple ones I'm still thinking about. I'm going to go to goalie, and I know I talked about Dobish. I'm still going to do a Fowler one, and it's just different enough than yours that I think it'll be allowed. Jacob Fowler will become the first Habs goalie since 1992 to only win the Vezina and not the Hart Trophy in the same year. Last 2 times.
Fascinating.
Theo and Price, they also won the Hart. Our team sucked so bad that they're like, you deserve multiple trophies.
Right.
92, Roy just wins the Vezina like most goalies do these days.
Because his team didn't
and
suck.
Jacob Fowler's likely going to be on a team that isn't terrible. So I think this is enough different than yours. You took it as an award to win the Vezina. I'm specifically saying...
I didn't even take that. I just mentioned it. I took the 40 wins. So this one is totally fair game. Totally fair game. Yeah, very nice. I think that's very well said. When you have a good team in front of you, you don't also win the Hart.
Okay, back to you.
Very cool. Okay, I'll do my last 2. So I've got the award and the wild card left, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So I think, man, I want to take the Martin St. Louis award, but I don't see it being a possibility. Is Stanley Cup too lame?
I was going to say there should be a rule that we can't say for the first time since 1993, the Montreal Canadiens win the Stanley Cup. If you want to go Conn Smythe, I'll allow that. But I know we've already kicked out Suzuki, Caufield, Hudson, so you have to go a bit further down the list.
So that I don't mind, but my wild card was going to be Slafkovsky. And of anybody else on the team for
That's
a Conn
true.
Smythe, I think Slaf is the one. The one I wanted to do for Slaf was a wild card, which I think I'm going to do anyway just because of how impressive it is. And it could happen this season, despite the jinx. The record for the Montreal Canadiens for power play goals by one player in a season is by Yvon Cornwallis in 66-67 with 20.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is not that many. Especially not that many when you consider that Slaf has 13 games left. The power play has heated up, and he's already at 14. So I'm going to say, I think I you know what? No, I'm going to mention that, and then I'm going to go Slaf for the Conn Smythe. I like that. I'm good with that. Because that's more important. Slafkovsky winning a Conn Smythe and just taking it over. Like, we've seen him be the best player on the ice in important games for Slovakia. What if that just happens for the Canadiens?
He is the most
That would be really cool.
Prototypical playoff guy that you could have on the team. So him,
right? And that's
so him
that's
scoring 16
exactly.
goals and 12 assists in the deep playoff run is fully in the cards. So what's your last?
So I am debating. I think I still want to stick with the power play.
Okay.
And this one I'm kind of going ad hoc. Oh, but you know what? It's Nick Suzuki, and I can't even take it. Oh, I think we've used everybody.
So what's your category left?
My category is wild card, and that's, I think, why I'm having so much trouble, because I want to do a very important one for that, but we've used all the big boys. Demidov is the last one that I'm kind of considering.
It's
here,
hard with him, because I thought about
because Hudson just
is it
did
impressive
all the
enough to say first point per game Russian player since Kovalev, when that was also just the full-blown record until Suzuki had point per game last year. So he's in a tough spot. Poor kid. I'm sure he'll be fine. I'm trying to look through my list here of what hasn't been used. Again, wild card, you're allowed to use everything. One that I was considering was in 2030, the Canadiens breaking their own record for most Olympians, which they had 7 in 2014. This year they only had 4. In 2010 they only had 4. In 2006 they had 6. So 7 is their record. Price, Pacioretty, Subban, Plekanec, Budaj, Markov, and Emelin. Can they get to 8 by 2030? I didn't go all the way on this because I didn't want to start counting players who might not be on the team and whatever, but I think that's one that's certainly in play. If you still have Slafkovsky Kapanen, if Demidov is back, if Suzuki's going to stick around, you have Hudson and Caufield with better chances. Dobson obviously is going to have a better chance, and who knows who else might be on the team by then.
Yep.
I couldn't get all the way there, but
Hage,
that was one that I had thought about.
Yeah. That's an interesting one. I think a bit of a long shot one that I was considering very strongly was actually Dobson for an award. So if it's a wild card, I can give a second award. I don't know that. I think I want to do it. I want to say since Subban, Dobson, first one, defenseman of the year. So the reason for it's a little bit involved, but it accounts for what we discussed recently, which is that he's so close to being a dominant defenseman. All he has to do is a couple of things, and we saw them this week. We saw it. We saw him. So Guhle laid that first body check on the rush that you mentioned before against the Islanders, and that was huge. That did, in fact, set the tone. You're absolutely right. Then Matheson had a giant check, and then Dobson had a giant check, like within the first 3-4 minutes of the game. All three of these guys. And Dobson was clearing the net a little bit better. He looked a little meaner. And we did say, like, if he can just add that, he is a perfect all-rounded defenseman, because all the other stuff is really good. And then he's got to limit the giveaways, but whatever. That's beside the point. So I think for lack of a better option, I might go Noah Dobson for the Norris.
Is this a longer shot than Gallagher playing 1,000 games?
Hey, no, it's not. Gallagher's not. I was
wondering if you were ever going to bring this one up, because that's the other one. But
no, I didn't want to, because it makes me sad that he's going to go into the same category as Markov, though for very different reasons. Like, Markov wasn't re-signed, even though he was a serviceable defenseman, because Bergevin was a poo-poo garbage GM who had his favorites, and Gallagher is just at nearing the end of his career physically, where he can't hack it anymore. One more year is going to go by, and I don't know that he plays more than half the games next season. I think it would behoove the Canadiens to have him play less than a quarter. Like, as much as I love Galley, I think that's just the realistic point of view, especially considering that next year is the real I know you said it's 2 years from now, but I do believe that they're going to make some moves in the offseason that make next year the first.
The only
year
thing
of the
I'll say to
contention
that
window.
is if he is on the team next year and he is playing, if he gets to like 985, 990 by the end of the year, and he is willing to do this, I think they would bring him back for the month of October the next season. Very Plekanec like.
And what, have him play 3 minutes a game,
get to game
go for a
1000
skate
and then
come
retire
back?
as a
Like,
Hab. I think that, look, they did it with Plekanec. I think that's, now Gallagher might say, no, I want a full contract, I want to go somewhere, and that's his prerogative if that happens. But I think if Gally finishes next year at 992, which I recognize is not very likely, but if he finishes at 992, I don't say you don't at least say like, we're going to give you like a prorated minimum whatever contract, and just to get to 1,000, and then you can retire. That's the only contract we'll offer you. Anyways,
it's just how beneath the level of what you need to be competitive can he get before it's just not like it's just optics wise, it's just a bad idea. And also just how close the Atlantic is going to be next year, how much of a bad idea that would be. I don't know that you risk positioning for the playoffs. Even if it's only October, those games count for as many points as the games in March and April.
Just a couple ones that I had that we can't use before I go into my last pick. Suzuki breaking Doug Jarvis's Ironman streak. We're getting close to it, but knock on wood. I was never gonna pick it because I don't want to jinx it, but I had it out there. First Lady Byng since 1988 was on the board. First Selke since 1992.
Yep.
First back-to-back 40-goal season since 82-83. If Caufield can do it. What else did I have here? Yeah, so I think those were kind of the big ones. So what I'll do with the last pick in the draft for my team pick, for the first time since 1993, the Montreal Canadiens will actually finish top 10 in the power play and the penalty kill in 2 years.
Okay.
Look, I will say this is a bit of ChatGPT help trying to figure out when this last happened. It first told me 2008. I knew that was a lie. I knew that power play was rocking, but that penalty kill wasn't. So, take it with a grain of salt.
Right.
Maybe I'm mixing something, but I feel like the Canadiens franchise is usually mixed either one or the other. We've never had both. It's been very rare to have last year the power play was starting to get good and the penalty kill was still like 7th or 8th in the league, and now they've flipped. To have two really good special teams is pretty rare. The fact that the last happened, as far as I can tell, in 1993, I don't think it's an accident. So I think we haven't talked big picture much this episode. I haven't wanted to because it's gotten a bit redundant and boring. But fixing the defensive structure and fixing the penalty kill is the biggest thing they have to do in the offseason. And I think the penalty kill more specifically, because that's a lot more X's and O's. If you fix that, and I think that takes...
And that involves bringing new guys in.
It probably has a more full-time Owen Beck, and I think a full-time David Reinbacher. But again, let's not get into that. It's more just, I think it's happening in the next couple years, because I don't see the power play really dipping anytime soon. So it's at what point can the penalty kill return to being kind of a net positive on this team, where it's truly been a net negative. So that's, with my last pick, I'll take that. Top 10 in power play and penalty kill for the first time in 30 plus years. In a year or two. We're not quite there yet. I'm not sure if it's possible next year, but maybe in 2 seasons.
Very cool. The other option that you might have had for the team was the first 300 goal season since 92-93, where they scored a ton and got scored on a ton. They almost had 300 goals against. This year, they would need 58 goals in the next 13 games. That's about 4.5 goals per game. So it's likely not happening this year. That would be a tall order. But they put a few more 7s up, and suddenly that becomes an approachable target. But in the near future, as goals become more available in the NHL and this team gets older and more experienced, then we have a real second line. That's a real possibility as well. So it's funny that happened in the same exact year, 92-93. That was definitely a season for like this idea of like first time since. There's a lot of them that date back to 92-93. There's a lot that date back to 85-86.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, those are 2 cup years. So it's kind of interesting how both of those are very frequent sinces. Is it saying something about this year, next year? Who knows? But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
We wanted to do this segment just to cheer people up, think a bit differently, get out of the doom and gloom, get out of the rage bait that a lot of people right now are getting faux angry right now. And I don't like that type of coverage. So we kind of chose to switch it up, think happy for a little bit. They won 2 out of 3 games. This is a bloodbath. Again, I don't know if we actually said this on the podcast. I think I told you offline. sixth in the Atlantic right now, would be first in the Pacific. Also, the Toronto Maple Leafs, who have been a laughingstock in the Eastern
Yeah.
Conference, I believe would be 1 or 2 points out of a playoff spot in the West. The East is just a different level as of, March 22nd. Maybe that's going to change and things will chill out a bit, but there are 9, 10, maybe even 11 teams really vying for a playoff spot right now, and we should be happy to be one of them. And it's okay to have fun. It's okay to be stressed a little bit sometimes with these games, but big picture, guys, right? Don't lose the forest for the trees.
Yeah, the forest looks pretty good. Pretty good. Let's do another analogy. Lots of young trees that are going to become big, tall trees.
I'm going to stop us there, Brian. I'll keep my potato mic and wrap it up there. You can follow us on social media at HabslandPod. If you like what you hear, please leave a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And until next Monday, go Habs.